What's happening, everybody? This is Hayden Adams. In this project, we're going to take a look at how to build a landing page from scratch. We're going to start by bringing a picture and a title at the very top. In this case, might have an SVG file. We're going to add some social media icons using Font Awesome and some awesome icons. We're then going to build a paragraph inside the top whereby it stops at a certain width at a maximum width. But as the site design gets smaller, so if I resize my browser, what happens is that the text holds to a size for maximum readability. Down the page, we're going to create a 2-column to a 1-column card structure using Bootstrap. So therefore, the site holds the size on a 1-column design. And as the site grows in size, it now goes back to 2 columns. So no matter what size browser we're using, it's going to hold steady. And the last part we're going to do is add, actually second to last part. The second last part we're going to do is add a contact me at the bottom. And then I can also go to landing page, maybe, landing page.hayden.co and see my website on the web. And I'll show you how to upload it and connect a domain name to it as well for maximum usability. And with that, let's get started. All right, so to get started, I have a basic HTML document, a CSS document as well, sitting right here on my computer. Now for files, they are empty. The index file again has nothing in it, and the custom CSS doesn't have anything in it as well. For my project, I'm using a toolbox.jpg, a surfing photo, the passive income toolkit SVG, or scalable vector graphic. I've got my hiking photo, and I've got my favicon.png. The reason why these are also different is the PNG for the favicon has to be in a square, and the toolbox picture is a rectangle. So I have the CSS and the HTML file. That's what I have to start with. So also when I'm going to be writing code, I'm going to use the tool called Visual Studio Code. It's actually built by Microsoft. You can believe it. There's that Microsoft icon, and it's really, really good. So if you're using anything else, that is totally fine to use. I'm just going to use Visual Studio Code or VS Code for this project. Now to get started, I am also going to use a framework called Bootstrap, which just makes me help me code a little bit quicker in a couple responsive design layouts. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say up to the docs, I'm going to go to getbootstrap.com. I'm going to go to docs, and in here, it provides me a great template already built for Bootstrap. Number 2 includes both the CSS Bootstrap min file and the JavaScript file as well below. I'm going to copy this to my clipboard, and in the index file, I'm going to drop it in. Now that I have this basic framework set up, I can now start my web server and actually build this live for you on the screen. Open web server, hello world, now we're talking. So the setup for this project for Bootstrap, if I kind of close this up, what I should get, there we go, using Chrome from my default browser, is in here the HTML document. I've got the head section on the top. It gives me the UTF, the character set, gives me the viewport with device width. This allows me to be responsive on both mobile and tablet. I also get the title tags, the Bootstrap demo. We'll change that down the road. And I also get the CDN, the content delivery network of Bootstrap 5.3. This might be a little bit higher in the future, but so far everything's staying the same as we go along. What I do want to add after this Bootstrap CSS is I want to add my own custom CSS. So I'm going to say link href, and in here I'll type period slash and say custom CSS. What is this? This is going to be rel style sheet, and I'll open and close it up. Just to make sure this CSS file does work, I'm going to say body and background color and just find some really annoying color. Awesome. As long as we can see the color showing up on the screen, we know that the CSS file is linked to the index file. It's always good to do this first, just in case you start coding. And if all of a sudden, let's say we have custom, let's say we have the wrong letter. If I type a purple color in and don't see it, I know right away that my index file is not connected to my custom, so I won't see into the code. Again, let me just take out that custom CSS file, or take out the custom M in custom. And in custom CSS, we can take out the body, knowing that it's going to work just fine going forward. Down below, we have our body tag. We have open and close body, and we have the H1 hello world. The great part about Bootstrap is that also the typography is responsive. So as I adjust the size of the browser, the font responds to the browser size by default. That is super awesome and makes it really easy to build in the future. Bring this back going forward. And we also have the JavaScript library as well at the bottom, and we're all set to go. We're going to use Bootstrap and some custom CSS to make this landing page. So let's work from the top and work our way down. I'm going to first change this name from Bootstrap Demo to the Passive Income Toolkit. After that, we already have our CSS files all set to go. What I also want to do is I want to bring in that favicon for it to show up at the screen, because right now there is no favicon sitting up here with this Bootstrap demo. Let me save it. Now the Passive Income Toolkit. So what I have to do is I'm going to say, after the link href, I'm going to say link, and then rel is going to be the icon. And after that, we'll say type equals image, and we'll say /png, because that's the file that I'm going to use inside the images folder, is the favicon.png. Now, since I am in an images folder, I have to also note that inside of the link information. So I'm going to say href equals, I'm going to say images, and in here is going to be the favicon.png. If we close it, now what we should get is my little toolkit icon at the very top that shows the Passive Income Toolkit text and the favicon right below. All right, after that, what I'm also going to add is a meta description to my design. So I'm going to say meta, and then name is going to be, description. I spelled that correctly, description, perfect. And after that, I'm going to say content equals, I'm going to drop this long sentence in. For people focused on building passive income, we provide the tools and the know-how. We're here to help turn your ideas into profits, and then turn your profits into more profits. After that, to make sure I'm going to close it successfully, did I spell description right? Double checking. Yes, I did. So I saved that. And again, the head section is just behind the scenes information. Whoa, this was not set up proper. What happened? Oh, you know what it is? It's just because I have a small area inside Chrome. So inside the head section, the meta name, description, content for people, we have the icon showing up, we have the custom CSS, and we have the title, Passive Income Toolkit. We are all set to go for right now. We're going to come back later on and add some additional components to the head section, but this is what we need to at least get started for right now to move forward into the body section of our landing page. All right, now that we have the head section set up, let's pay attention now to the body tag information going forward. What I'm going to do is temporarily take out this H1 tag. I'm going to bring it back, but for right now, we're going to just take it away. I'm going to say div class. We're going to write some flex information that's inside of Bootstrap. Flex is really powerful. If we head over to get Bootstrap, just so you see what we're working with, I'm going to type in flex for the flex behaviors. This allows me to move content around the screen. What I want to do is, if we scroll down here, I want to move the justify content to the center, and I want to vertically align it as well with the flex item sitting vertically in alignment. This is all thanks to the power of flex, or we have to write the word deflex. Where is it? Deflex makes everything work. So what I'm going to do is in this div class below, let me go back, I'm going to hide get Bootstrap, hello world, close up a few windows here. And I'm going to say div class d flex. I'm going to say min vertical height equals 100. I got to pull my whole design down the entire page. So if you don't have enough content, it can sit in the middle of the page going forward. I then want to say justify content center and align items, there's a good one, item center. And then we're going to add a margin up and down, which is the y-axis. So we can type margin y, and I'm going to say 3, and then my, I'm going to say LG, come on LG, 40. Now what this basically says at the very end is that this is a mobile framework first site, meaning by default, everything works on mobile and flows down the page. If we take a look at a little deeper at the grid, where is that grid? We'll just type grid in here. So if I say grid, inside, there it is, breakpoints. That's what I'm looking for. Everything by default is defaulted. Then we can set a small, a medium, a large, an extra large, or an XXL for breakpoints, meaning when it goes below a certain size, do this. Note I have the letters LG. For the letters LG, I said basically add 0 margin if it goes large or bigger, or in this case, 992 pixels is the large size. However, add a top and bottom margin if it goes below that. So it's a little counterintuitive at first thought, but this actually helps just give a little extra breakage at the very top of the page if we have such a large design. Now again, your design might change or not change based upon that, so do be aware of how your margins might be different, but I'm sticking with the 3 and the 0 for my design. All right, let's open and close that div, and just for sake of fun, let's add the word test. Hey, check it out. The word test is in the middle of the page. That's thanks to the min VH 100 for the vertical height 100. And that also allows us to then, if we take off the justify, it goes left and right. And if we take out the align item center, it goes to the top and to the bottom. Now again, you really can't see this. It doesn't really do much. But if we were to go and we were to say, you know what, let's just do inspect, and let's drop this to a whole different design. By default, the test is right there. But if we then, well, it's kind of hard to see, but it moves a little bit. So essentially what happens is it moves down the page as it goes to a mobile environment. This will come through a little bit later in our design. So we'll just leave it here for right now, and I'll show you later on how it works versus doesn't work when it's turned on and turned off in the design. Now what I want to do is I want to add a background color to this entire design and then make a white background for my main content area. So for design, it's all about the custom CSS. So in the body, in CSS, I like to write code inside of CSS as biggest to smallest, top to bottom. If we think about biggest to smallest, the biggest tag we can pretty much work with is the body tag. And then we're going to go inwards, inward, and then downwards going forward. So the body tag, I'm going to use a couple things. By default, I'm going to set a background color, background, and I'll say RGB. And we're going to use 99, 99, 99. Now this is red, green, and blue. If they're all the same colors, then by default, you're going to get a gray. What I'm going to do is take it one step further. I actually used a fantastic tool called CSS Gradient. If you've never heard of this tool, you got to check out this tool. It is so rad. Now, these are probably not the numbers I used. It's pretty close, actually. So what it is, it allows you to make any kind of design you want in a CSS gradient fashion. Choose the color, choose transparency. The sky is the limit. So actually it did keep my colors from what I did before. That's pretty awesome. But I'll still write it by hand just because I want to talk through the design. Because CSS is cascading, the background is going to be a radial gradient. And in there, we're going to say a circle gradient, and RGB A, is going to be 99, 99, 99, and then 1 for alpha, or 100% alpha. After that, we're going to say this is a 35% to 100%. Think about a gradient. You have to have some percentage where it stops, and that's the number I wanted to have at it. And then what I'm going to say is RGBA again. RGB should catch. There we go. And then in the parentheses, I will say 72, 73, should be all 73. I guess I have one number off. And then 1, and that's going to equal 100%. This will give us, if we then go back, check this out. Now we have a radial gradient. It's soft. I didn't want something very harsh, but I wanted a soft gradient coming into my design going forward in this project. Now, after I have the radial gradient, I then want to set up the white background. So we'll say white BG. Now I only name things colors if I know it's going to be like pretty much white, white, and white. So background, I don't know what that was all about. Let's try that one more time. Background color, I'm going to use the word white. Now I am going to use a box shadow as well in this design. I'm going to say box shadow. I'm going to say 0px for the x and y. 10px is the spread, and 10px is for the drop off. I'm going to say RGBA for this color, and I'm going to say 72. Actually, the same number, think about it, I did have as well. So it drops it in, and now we have a white background. So if we add this extra design element to it, so in the index file, we've got our body background, but I need to include a white background as well in this design. I'm going to say div class, and in here I'll say white BG, and then the word test. Awesome. You can see the shadow and the white text. Now, to me, this is way too close together. So I want to add some padding inside this design. So after the white background, I'm going to say P4. There we go. We've got some padding. Now I am going to use a margin X or MX of 4. Again, we can't see it here, but if we type a sentence, so if we grab the same piece, so this is one long sentence designed to show how the margins work with the mobile design. You need enough text to show this. Perfect. Now, if we look at it from a mobile perspective, and we take out this margin X4, what happens is that the text goes all the way to the left, or the box, I should say, goes all the way to the left and the right. Since I have the shadow on my design, I did not want to have it go all the way to the edge. So I just dropped the margin X, X, and Y for this design on all sides. Now I wanted to have a little bit of a roundness to this design, and if I use the Bootstrap roundness, what I can do is say rounded. What's going to happen is it'll round the corners based upon the Bootstrap default rounded corner. So this is one long sentence designed to show how the margins work with the mobile design. Awesome. We have our white box floating in the middle of our design. Now it's actually time to put content into this design. I always like to have the structure in place first before I go forth and add more content. Kind of a fail-safe technique that I like to use. All right, I can take out this long sentence. I don't need this one long sentence. And what I'm going to do next is I want to add the picture of the toolbox and this SVG file of the passive income toolkit. We're going to say section for this design. So we'll say section to give it a section. And in here, we're going to add a div. And in the div, I'm going to say image source. And in here, we will say images. And I'm looking for this case, looking for the toolbox.jpg. That one goes first. And the passive income toolkit text comes second. For my design, I know that the width is going to be 200 pixels by, in this case, the height is going to be 108. Now don't forget to add the alt information. So we'll say red toolbox. There we go. And since this does self-close, there we go. It now adds it in there. And I had the alt tag and I made sure the width and height was the right ratio of the toolbox. Keep in mind, if I were to say 50, well, everything really were to turn interesting in that situation. So do be aware of your width and height that you are using in this design going forward, because I have everything being static as much as possible so it doesn't content shift as the page loads. It's always important to include the width, the height, and the alt when you have your pictures along, of course, with the source tag. Now that I have this div in place, I'm going to add a second div and add the passive income toolkit. So in here, I'm going to say div and image. I'm going to say source equals, and we'll say images. We're looking for the SVG file. Now in here, we'll also say width is going to equal 300 and the height is going to equal 21. Also, I don't forget the alt tag. So we'll say alt. In this case, it is just passive income toolkit text. And now it adds it. Now, the thing about it is we didn't actually center this. So what I have to do is I want to come back up to the section. Oops. Let's not forget that. I did not close that tag. Thank you, VS Code, for telling me I didn't do something correctly. If I hit slash close tag, now we're all set to go. But what I want to do is I want to then have my section have a class, and I want to say text center the picture up top. By default, it will center the toolkit as we add more content into the design. The thing about the flexbox, which is pretty cool about this, is the flexbox will flex, as in it'll grow to the size of the content within the actual toolkit, within the div tag. So if I were to write, again, if I add this whole entire sentence down, I didn't want to copy this. This is for example. But if I were to say, let's just drop this in, notice now how much wider our box got. We'll take it out for right now since we don't need that right there. But we have more of the head section for the passive income toolkit. Now, we took out that H1. The problem is we have to bring it back because right now, Google and other readers cannot read image tags in terms of what this page is called. So what I want to do is I want to add something back. I'm going to say H1, and this is the passive income toolkit. Now, as you can see, we have a passive income toolkit and, of course, the passive income toolkit SVG file. I don't want to show the H1, but I want it to be there for readers. So I'm going to say H1 class, and in here, I'm going to say display none. Just hide it for this case. It's minimal, but I do like to include text behind the scenes when I'm building some kind of design. Now, if this is too close together, I can also use a bit of a design element. So I can say div, and I can say margin top 1 if I feel that my design needs a little extra space. For my design, I did use a margin top 2. And just so you are aware of what the MT2 is, let's go back this one. If we type MT2, or it didn't, that was supposed to work. Margin and padding, there we go. So what the margin and padding does is it has a scale from 1 to 5. So essentially, I thought this using to show examples of. There we go, what size of it as. So by default, you can set to 0 if you wanted to set the mobile site, and it goes to a spacer of 0.25 to 0.5 to 1 to 1.5 to 3, or 1 through 5, or setting autos or zeros as well. Long story short, I can adjust it by saying 1 through 5. So in this toolkit, if I feel like I need a little extra space, I might say 3, or if I need a lot of space, I'm going to throw 5. So in this case, the margin top 2 works just fine. What I'm going to do next is add some more content below in the toolkit. So moving down the page in this section, I'm going to create a new section. And this is just to help the semantics identify section to section, since this is a new section below the top part. I could kind of use header if I wanted to. That's up to how you want to identify your design, but my design, I just created section, section, and section down the page. For this part, what I want to do is I'm going to add some information about what is the passive income toolkit. So in this section, I'm going to say class. Oops. I'm going to come back to the section tag. I'm going to say class, and I'm going to add the container. This gives me a little extra margin space for text down the road. And inside the container, I'm going to add a margin top of 4. So in here, I'm going to add a div, and I'm going to come back to this div in a little bit. And then I'm going to say P for paragraph and class lead. The lead gives us a larger text to work with within Bootstrap. So I'm going to use that same sentence I had before at the top of the page. So I'm going to bring it in for people focused on building passive income. Now, whoa, that is way too long to read. And if we just also show how the lead can come off, that is the basic text, and that's the lead text. So this is way too far across the page. I don't like the way this is looking. Yes, on a mobile framework, if we come back and inspect it, that one looks fine. And again, ignore the scrolling because I have to then make my browser, there it is. That looks good. I like having a little bit of a narrow design inside of this right here, which is happening because of the container. However, what I don't want to have happen is it go way across the page going this far. I want it to be a lot narrower. So I'm going to build a narrow column. So in this design, I'm going to come back to my CSS. And what I want to do is I want to say narrow call. So inside the white background, or after the white background, what I'm going to say is narrow call. In this case, I'm just used to using capital call. Call me weird, but instead of having a dash, that's just how I roll. And I, force of habit continues on. So inside the narrow call, I'm going to say max width is going to be 500 pixels. And in here, I'll say margin 0 auto. This allows me to center my text inside the page without having to center the text. So what I mean by centering the text is, let's first bring the narrow call in. And inside this div, I'll say class narrow call. So what I mean by centering is I don't want to do this. So to me, that's hard to read because it's a paragraph. Think about a book. Even though we think about centering is actually easier, it's harder. If centering was easy to read, all of our books would be centered type. It's not. So for me, I want to center the type relative to the text, but I also want space on the other side for maximum readability. If I get too close to the edge, what happens is it gets harder to read. So the container helps me out a little bit by just giving some extra space in that design. So we have our text inside our design. What I next want to do is I want to bring some cards and a basic grid to showcase what I'm promoting in the passive income toolbox below. Let's scroll our information down and we have our section area. So I'm going to add a new section below. And what this section is going to be a bunch of cards. Now, what are cards? If we head back to our Bootstrap, if we take a look at cards, what they are is a batch of information. We have a picture on top, we have a card title, we have some quick example text, and we have a button to go somewhere. We're going to use this with the grid inside of Bootstrap. Now, if I can find the grid, there it is. What the grid does is the grid allows us to build columns of information. We're going to build a 1 of 2 and a 2 of 2, essentially having a 2-column grid in our design to showcase our cards. Enough talking, let's go build this. So what I want to do is back in this section, card section, I'm going to say section class, and I want to add something new. because again, remember how the flex goes all the way across the page unless I'm being careful. I want to bring in what's called a single call. I know, something different than a narrow call. This is just how I've used some words in the past. So I'm going to say single call. And this one is a little bit wider than a narrow call, but the same kind of logic applies. What I want to do with this is I want to say max width, and I'm going to say 750 pixels, and again, margin 0, auto. Drop it in and save the single call. And if we use our, we'll just do this for example, the background color, we'll bring our aqua in. If we showcase what the single call can do, so if I say section class and we say single call, so what's going to happen is this will hold the space. Well, actually, it's going to hold the space by default because we didn't actually drop in the text. So again, if I drop in some example text inside the single call, notice now how it makes it wider than the narrow call, so it goes small, medium, wide at the bottom part, but it doesn't go crazy wide. So again, if I were to then take out the single call, it goes all the way across the page. For readability, that's too wide. So I want to actually have a max width on my single call, and that's why I have it right here. What I'm also going to add is I'm also going to add a horizontal rule just for some spacing, and drop it in. So I've got this horizontal rule to separate the intro information with the cards of information I'm going to have below. All right, let me take out that really annoying aqua color and let's actually build these cards out. So in the single call, let me take this out. Don't worry about that. I'm going to add a row and columns. So div class, I'm going to say row, and then I have to add a gutter for my design, which is going to be G-3. Remember the margins 1 through 5? The same with the gutters can also go 1 through 5. If you don't want any gutter, which I do not recommend, you do not have to have the G, but in this case, I'm going to include it inside of my rows. After I put the G3 in there, I can add an article. So I'll say article in here. And the class, I'm going to do something unique. Now, the columns work on a 12-column design. Think of 12 columns coming down the page. If we do the math, if I want 2 columns, that's 12 divided by 2, which is equal to 6. So we're going to say call MD, remember the breakpoints before, we're going to say 6. Just for example, I'm going to drop in a word test, and we'll do it twice. What we should get, there we go, is the word test on the left and the word test on the right. If we think of our 3 columns and the breakpoints, I should say the 6-column, 12-column design, what's going to happen is those words test will go across the page and then eventually go down the page as we get to the actual below the medium size. So if we take a look at our breakpoints, did it not catch? There it goes. So the medium will go down below 768, essentially equating to any size mobile screen. Anything bigger than 768, like a horizontal tablet, then go back to 2-column design going forward. Let's pull this one back, drop it in, and we're all set to go. So we have the words test and test. I like to just, test things along the way to make sure they're working. If I write too much code that I know something's not working, then I have to go back and find it. If I go one at a time, I know that it is working. In this case, they're working fine. I'm going to take out the second article. And in this article class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say div class card. Now the card should have an open and a close. There it goes. And I'm going to say image source. This one's going to be the surfing one. So I'll say /images. And this one's going to be surfing. And the surfing one is going to have a class in here of card image top. This will give us the rounded top corners of the card for the card picture. The alt is going to be, and we're going to have wave crashing in ocean. We're going to come back and put the width and height. Let me just save this for a second to see how it works. And there it is. We have the wave going on here. Let me just add some return keys just because I've got a lot of information going on. And what I want to do then is I want to add a width and height to this design. So by default, the picture will hold the space properly. However, it's really proper semantic code in order to write this whereby the content doesn't shift away from the right proportions of the picture. In this case, my picture is a 16:9 ratio. So I know that the width is going to be 640 pixels, 640, and height is going to be, I have 360. And I just realized I forgot to add the image fluid into the class. So by default, it is pushing my width at a fixed width, but it's not adjusting the height properly. What I have to do is I have to use the word image-fluid. And now the picture is the right proportions at 16:9 for the ratio. Again, if I didn't have the image fluid, it wouldn't take into account of the height relative to the width. It assumes that the height is fixed at this height, and now the image fluid allows me to move the picture at any size that I want to. Awesome. Let me just do this again so we can see it again. We've got our card. It's looking good, but there's no content yet below the actual picture. So what I want to do, if I drop my picture, my browser back in there, is after the image tag, I'm going to close the tag just so we have it sitting here. And what I want to do next is I want to add a div class to a card body. So we have the card and we have the image. Now we have to add the body of the card. So in here, after the picture, we're going to say div class and we'll say card dash body. In here, we'll say h5 and we're going to say, class. We will say card title. And in here, we're going to say the road to sales because it totally matches up with the surfing. So we have our big wave. We got little surfers in the background over here, the road to sales. And then we're going to add some information down below. And for the sake of keeping the same example text, I'm going to use paragraph tag. And in the paragraph, I'll say card text. In here, open and close the P tag. And now we have the road to sales. And we have some quick example text to build on the card title. What I then want to do is have a button that goes somewhere. So what I want to do is after the paragraph tag, I will say ahref. And in here, I'll just add a pound sign just so it sits there for right now. And you can choose the style of button that you want to work with. Now, how the buttons work, if we come back to our Get Bootstrap, our buttons are based upon a couple things. By default, you have to add the term BTN when you design a button using Bootstrap. Now, you also get a bunch of different colors: primary, secondary, success, danger, warning, info, light, and dark. I primarily use either the blue, the light, or the dark, but every so often with financial, I will use the green to say a success or a button like that. So for this example, I am going to use the dark one. So I'm going to copy the BTN and the BTN dark. So if we come back to our design, we say class BTN and BTN dark. I'm then going to say go somewhere and drop it in. And to me, I feel like the all black is what I want to go with. However, I want it outline. I want something just clean in this design. So what I really want is I want the one below it. Come on. I want the outline buttons. I want the dark outline. So I want the BTN outline dark for this to work. Drop it in. And now what I get is the black outline. I feel like these outlines just go better with my overall rounded corner, and rounded corner for this overall design. Now that I have this one set up to go, I'm going to copy and paste and move the second one in. Since I'm working with articles, I'm going to grab the article, and in here, I'm going to copy, give an extra space just so we can see it on the screen. And now we have the road to sales on the right-hand side. Now, I think this should I take it back. My example did not say road to sales. It said surfing secrets. Helps if I follow the right notes in my, oh, I have them backwards. Oh my gosh. Let me copy this surfing secrets to the top one. That would make sense. Why did not have the road to sales on the right-hand side, but on the left-hand side? So I have surfing secrets, and then I have the road to sales, which should have been on the right-hand side. A little cleanup on aisle 5, because that's how it rolls when I'm recording pretty much live on this design. Now I have the surfing picture on the left-hand side, and I have the hiking photo on the right. So I'm going to change the surfing picture. So I'll go back and say images, and I have the hiking, and I'll say person hiking in woods. All right. And since the pictures are the exact same size and ratio, if we come back here, the hiking photo and the surfing photo are exactly the same size. So do note that if you do bring different size pictures in, you'll have to either crop them or use some CSS. I just like to pre-crop them. That way I'm not using up any extra data because the entire picture is shown. So I did work in Photoshop to make sure that these were both black and white and that I have them at the same ratio. So therefore the 640 by 360 size works. What I then want to do is add a horizontal rule below them. So what I'm going to do is after the section, I'm going to say HR and drop it in. And now we have our card section, which should be responsive. So if we then go inspect, and I'm going to bring this down a little bit lower. Notice now how we have our passive income, I can't say this phrase all of a sudden, passive income toolkit. We have our introduction information right here, and we have surfing secrets, go somewhere, and the road to sales next as well in this design. Not looking too bad. I want to add the very bottom, I want to add some content in terms of how to contact me via email. Let's do some cleanup here. Let me go back on Chrome, move it back up to the top, take off the inspect. And now what I want to do is I want to add one more section. You could call this a footer if you want to. I still call it a section for this one, but it's kind of a footer. It's up to you how you want to call this one. In this case, I'm going to say section one more time. And in here, I'm going to add a paragraph tag and say class text center. In here, I want to say contact me at, and I want to add an email address. So I'm going to say href equals mail to and say me@me.com. I'm just going to copy this. And for the link, I'll drop it in and I'll say contact me at mail to : for the email address and drop it in. Now for me, I don't like the way, I shouldn't use the word me in hindsight after saying this a couple times, but I don't like the way it underlines this information. So in the custom CSS, what I'm going to do is, since I only have this one, I'm going to say section, and I'm going to say A, and I'll say text decoration none. What's going to happen is that underline's going to go away, and notice you still want a reactionary design. And by default, Bootstrap goes from a lighter blue to a darker blue. I like having a blue color for my design just because it helps someone know to click on there. If you just want to have a black color versus an underline, you should have one of the two designs. So I can say color inherit. This will move it back up to its parent. But notice now that it doesn't look like you can click on this design. So what I also want to do then is on the color inherit text decoration, I then want to say take the decoration out. And now I have the underline sitting here. And then what I can do is I can say section A hover, also go back to color inherit, and that'll bring back the blue color if I want that as well. Again, what you should do, let me go hover color, we'll go blue. There it goes. You should have some color coming into this design. In this case, for me, I like having the blue just to show someone right off the bat. So I am going to go back to my design and not have color inherit, but I'm going to use the term text decoration and say none. To me, I like the blue and I don't want the underline in my design. So for me, it fits perfectly in the design for what I want. Awesome. We have one awesome looking passive income toolkit, but we need to get this online to actually promote our landing page somehow. Well, let's bring in Mr. Netlify, one of the coolest tools I can use on the internet. So what I want to do with Netlify is a tool that I can literally drag and drop my website. I can push your ideas, in this case, drag and drop my ideas onto the web. So I'm going to log in. If you're brand new, you'll want to click on sign up. And on this page, what I want to do is on my design, I'm going to add a new site. And I'm going to actually do it by saying deploy manually. So what the deploy manually does is it says drag and drop your site output folder here. That's pretty cool. So assuming everything's built the right way, and it looks like it really is, I can just go ahead and grab this folder and in a CSS folder, drop it in. And like magic, it publishes my website. Post-processing complete. If I refresh the page, it should give me a link. Creates this glistening smacager. That's a good one right there. In 9062003. Instantly, I have a website that's working. It's looking great. Wow, that was fast. Thank you, Netlify. Now, obviously, we don't need to give out the glistening smacager. And I have to stop saying laughter at that one. So what I want to do is I want to add my own domain name to it. So what you'll have to do within your design is that on the left-hand side, there's a little thing that says domains. In here, you have to add your domain into Netlify. I've already gone and done that. So what I want to do is I'm going to configure my site via the domain management. And in here, I can change my Netlify name. So if I want to give it a better name than this one, so glistening smacager 9203203, I can do that, and it's going to say save it and then give it the proper name via .netlify. Since I already have an existing domain name, I'm going to say this one landing page dot. Oh, you know what I got to do? I forgot. Add a domain. Sorry about that. And I added a domain I've already owns. So if I've already added my domain into this design, in here, I'm going to then say landing page. And mine also has hayden.co. So I'll use verify. Yep, it's already here on Netlify DNS. Add the subdomain. And now what happens is that now I have a landing page .mydomainname.co. Of course, HTTPS. Yes, I do. Perfect. Certificate came through. Now I have a better one that's landing page.hayden.co for my design. And obviously I would use my passive income if I wanted to as well. But for right now, I'm using hayden.co for the passive income toolkit piece of it all. So I have this website online. It is looking great. And the last thing I want to do is I want to bring in some extra icons for social media at the top. I left this for the end only because it's a little bit extra on top of the existing code, and it's up to you if you want to add it or not. These are the more important credentials you want to have on your landing page, but I also want you to have the ability to bring in social media icons as well. We're going to do that using Font Awesome. So what I want to do is I'm going to head over to Font Awesome. So we'll head over to fontawesome.com. And this is a fantastic tool to add icons to your website. If we look at the icons, so if we type the word Facebook, for example, and go in here, there's two sections of icons. There's the free section and the brand section. And the brand section will have basically any icon you can think about that you can use for your project, from GitLab to, I don't know, think Pixar, PlayStation, MasterCard, you name it, it's in here. TikTok, GitHub, Twitter, Facebook, Slack, they're all here that you want to use. So we can use these icons in our project via this website, Font Awesome. Now in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to the page, and halfway down the page, what I'm looking for is use them yourself. And what I'm going to do is start for free. That's what I'm looking for that right section. And on Font Awesome /start, I'm not going to click my email for the free kit. What I want to do is other ways to use, I'm going to download this whole project. Since I'm going to upload the whole thing to Netlify, we can just download the whole project and it's free for the web. So I'm going to click on free for web. And what I get is this massive folder that is Font Awesome free mine 67-3.2 for this one, released December 2024. We're recording this in 2025. Now, I don't need everything, but what I do need is enough information on my design to use where I can bring in the Font Awesome icons. So I'm going to build a new folder, and I'm going to call this one Font Awesome, just so we have it in a folder separating our images from our CSS as well. From here, I have to pull two folders. I have to pull, let me make this a little bigger. I'm going to pull the CSS folder, and I'm going to pull the web fonts folder. I'm going to drop them into Font Awesome and drop it in. It goes, and it has those folders. What I want to do next is I want to link these folders up to my design. Now my project should be still running. I don't see why not. Always to test to make sure my server is working, drop that famous or just take out the body. Yep, and it's working just fine. Ooh, that's a very dark shadow. Perfect. Now we're looking better in that design. So what I have to do is I have to first go up to the head section and add these icons in. So what I want to do is I have to first add the Font Awesome min.css. So I'm looking for is the Font Awesome min.css. It's a little bit smaller than the normal Font Awesome, which the min stands for minified. It just means it crashed all the text together. So it took out all the spaces, more for the computer to read, not for us to read. So I'm going to go Font Awesome CSS and Font Awesome min.css. Again, you can have all these CSS files. We're just not referencing them inside our CSS. We're just referencing a few of them, which we're going to use for our brands. So what I'm going to do is after my CSS, when it comes to Bootstrap, but before the custom, I don't want to wreck my custom file. What I want to do is I'm going to say link href. We're going to go in to Font Awesome to CSS. We're looking for the Font Awesome.min.css. And we'll say rel style sheet. Drop it in, close it up. Now there's two pieces to this. The first one is that CSS. The second one we have to bring in is the brands one. So we're going to do the same thing and say href and say Font Awesome, CSS, and CSS, and we're looking for the brands.min. And the same, add the rel, not the referrer policy. Let's try that one more time. Style sheet, save, and by default, nothing's going to happen, which is totally fine. So for my design, what I'm going to use are Instagram, YouTube, and Threads. So what I have to do is I'm going to have to go find the Instagram icon. So icons, I'm going to say Instagram. And in here, it found Instagram or Instagram Square. Note there's also pro ones you can use if you want to pay for them, but by default, the first 3 are totally free. I'm going to Instagram this and say copy code snippet just like that. So what I want to do is I want to build 3 icons in a row inside of my HTML. This is going to go below the passive income toolkit, but above the text announcing what this page is all about. So I'm looking for the section class. So right here, the word test and the word test. We're moving in the middle. I'm not worried about that part. So we're going to use our old friend, Mr. Flex, to make this work. So we're in a new section to our design. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in this section, I'm going to say class D flex. So what I can do is I can add 3 icons all in a row together. And in the D flex, what I'm going to do is justify content center. And I'm going to add a new text called social media, which we're going to write later on within our CSS. And we'll add a margin top 4 to make it consistent above the screen as well. So if I say the word test one more time, perfect. The text should go right in the middle between the passive income toolkit and the text inside for the lead information. So let me move this back a little bit, just we're not going back and forth all the time. There we go. So I've got the section class and the dflex, and just so you can see what dflex does if we turn it off. So if I say div test and div test again, by default, they're side by side. What if I take out that dflex? Where'd it go? There it is. What happens is the word test goes vertical where the test is on top of the word test. So the dflex allows us to be more flexible in our design. So I copied that Instagram information, but I lost it when I copied that. So I'm going to come back and copy this Instagram information. In the first div, what I want to do is I'm going to paste this Instagram icon in to see if it works, just to make sure. And sure enough, our Instagram icon's working great. But we don't have a link to it to click on it to actually go somewhere. So I'm going to cut it out for 1 second. I'm going to say href, and I'm going to say https:// and say instagram.com. And this is where you would add your username right here to the Instagram area of the link. After that, what I want to do is I'm going to say target _ blank will open up a new window when someone clicks on the Instagram icon. If I open and close the A tags, now what I get is a clickable area for Instagram, and it turned blue. That's awesome, but I don't want it to turn blue up there, but I want it to turn blue down below, because people assume if they see social media icons that by default they're already clickable. So that's why I wrote the term social media up here inside of my class section. What I want to do is I want to add a new bit of CSS. And what I want to do here is I want to say social media A, and I'll say color goes inherit. Inherit means go back 1 level to its parent. So by default, the A tag is blue, but there's no parent color aside from black. So it just allows me to write a universal inherit to go back to its parent color. If you did everything gray, then that icon would be gray inside of this design. So inherit just allows me to write a little more of a universal term, not so much in terms of a specific color. So if I were to change the color somewhere, the A would come through automatically. We come back to the index page, and I have the Instagram looking pretty good. And I have to add one more information because by default, there's no text. Oh, hello, Doc. How you doing over there? So the problem is that there's no text in this information. Much like the H1, even though I hid the information, I wanted to have some text information to identify the title of the page. What I also have to do with this href is I want to say aria label. And what the aria label does, identifies what is here. In this case, I have Instagram. So it identifies that the link is an Instagram link when I say aria label. What I also want to do is I want to create some spacing. So I'm going to create just visual spacing, drop the word target, drop the word aria. And in here, if I come down the page, what I want to do is I'm going to say class. And in here, I'm going to add a margin on the left and right of 2. This will give everything the same margin across the design. Perfect. There's my Instagram. Now, to me, it's a little small in the design. So what I'm going to do is I want to create a larger icon. So what I can do is I can say font awesome, and I can say XL. What the XL does is it makes the size bigger. Small, medium, large, XL, 2XL, and 3XL you get as well for your sizes. In this case, the XL works just great. So I've got the Instagram one. And now what I want to do is I want to add the YouTube. I'm going to move this up just for a little bit so I can see my design. And I'm going to copy this A tag and paste it to see if it just shows up. Perfect. I've got the Instagram. What I'm going to do next is I want to add the YouTube in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to search for YouTube. And YouTube, there we are. Maybe. I'm going to copy this. In this case, I already have the FA brands. I just want the FA YouTube. So I can copy it, or I know what it's going to do. For the second one, I can just say YouTube. And if I save it, what I get is the icon right here for YouTube. Now I will have to change the link. So this would be youtube.com. And whatever your username is, I think there's an @ sign to it as well. They'll double check that. But in the link, you would put here for your YouTube and change the aria label to YouTube. Now we don't need the word test. We can get rid of that one. So what I want to then do is after I have these pieces here, I then want to then take out, or not take out, but copy one more piece and drop it in. Now I don't need the div tags. Those can go away since I only have one set of divs. Let me just clean it up a little bit. There we go. Now I have it lining up just perfectly. So of course I copied and pasted YouTube 1, 2, and 3. What I then want to do is add threads. So if I come back in here and I say threads, drop it in, threads, awesome. FA threads, just want to make sure it's the right way, which it is. So in here, on the very bottom one, I'm going to say threads.net and then username. I'm then going to change the aria label to threads. And in here, I will take out YouTube and say threads. And now I have my passive income toolkit with the icons lining up. Note there's a little space difference just because the icon's a little wider versus narrower. Again, this is where if you do want them all square, you can get the option for the square thread along with the YouTube square, along with the Facebook square. So it makes everything, there is the Facebook square. So it's up to you if you want to use the square or the regular one. If you do use regular size ones, just know they're a little different in sizing. That's not a problem. Just the spacing of it is a little bit different based upon the size of the icon going forward. And now if we save this, save it, let's bring it back over. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop it over to Netlify. And in here, I'm going to deploy it. And again, I can click on deploy, update your site, just drag and drop. So what I can do is drag and drop my start section, drop it in, and within a few seconds, it's uploaded. Now again, by default, this is the name of the actual project, But of course, we've already added our domain management and landingpage.hayden.com. If I simply refresh my page, now we get the 3 icons going on right here. Threads, we have YouTube, we have Instagram. And this makes for one fantastic landing page.